stuck it too later. Mindfuck, it's such a perfect day to keep on stalling. The floor's so comfortable here with my biscuit stash. It tastes a little salty, little sweet.
Wow. Oh, this is a bidding. 에너지 들어가 있어요. 우와.
맛봐도 돼요?
와우.
와, 색깔이 조금 노란색이에요. 부드러워요.
You see? Beautiful little octopus shape.
Yes. Perfect.
싹.
U.S. President Donald Trump describes the month-long ceasefire with Iran as unbelievably weak, while Tehran says it has completed preparations for any possible retaliation. South Korean and U.S. defense chiefs met at the Pentagon to discuss a wartime operational control transfer and efforts to restore navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, while also reportedly addressing sensitive issues, including nuclear-powered submarines and limits on U.S. intelligence sharing on North Korea. Korea's economy is showing signs of a semiconductor-driven rebound, but a state-run think tank warns that mounting global shocks are deepening imbalances across key industries. U.S. President Donald Trump has once again slammed Iran's response to Washington's latest peace proposal, while Tehran says it's fully prepared for any possible U.S. military action. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has described the month-long ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran as being unbelievably weak and on massive life support. Trump made comments in response to questions from reporters in the Oval Office on Monday. He also referred to a peace proposal from Iran as totally unacceptable and a piece of garbage.
After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand.
Underlining that Tehran cannot have a nuclear weapon, he claimed that Iran had agreed to hand over its highly enriched uranium to the United States, and that the U.S. was one of the only countries that could remove it, but later changed its position.
So we talked about it, and they said, you'll have to take it out because we don't have the capability of doing it. We were going to go with them But they changed their mind because they didn't put it in the paper.
Earlier on the same day, the U.S. president told Fox News that he was considering resuming the suspended Project Freedom operation. The news outlet reported Trump as saying that guiding U.S. military ships in the Strait of Hormuz would be a small part of a larger military operation, though he had not made a final decision yet. In response to pressure from Trump, Iran said he had completed preparations for all possible countermeasures. Mohammad Bahir Ghalibaf, who led the Iranian delegation in the ceasefire negotiations, wrote on X on Monday night that Iran's armed forces are fully prepared to respond decisively to any aggression, and that Iran is fully prepared for every option and that the response would be surprising. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea says it's moving recovered debris from the Korean vessel HMM Namu attacked in the Strait of Hormuz to Seoul for forensic analysis. Now, this as uncertainty grows over maritime security in and around the strait. Our Oh Seung has the details.
Debris recovered from the attack on the Korean vessel HMM Namu will soon be brought to Seoul for forensic analysis as concern deepens over the safety of Korean ships stranded near the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, a foreign ministry official said the government is working to bring recovered engine fragments of HMM Namu into the country for examination by specialized institutions. The official said the Defense Ministry would support the analysis, but that the exact agency, transport route and timing are still under review. Seoul is trying to determine what type of flying objects struck the vessel, saying it is unclear whether they were drones or missiles. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun earlier on Tuesday declined to confirm speculation that an Iranian-made Shahed 136 drone might have been involved, saying any conclusion would be premature. The Blue House later affirmed that authorities cannot yet definitively determine the type of aircraft involved, adding that further analysis would seek to identify the attacker, the exact model, and the physical size of the object used in the strike. The Panama-flagged Korean container ship caught fire last week in waters near the United Arab Emirates. A joint government investigation later found the fire was caused by an external attack involving two unidentified flying objects. Images released by Seoul showed a large hole in the lower part of the vessel, measuring around 5 meters wide and 7 meters deep. The case has heightened anxiety over Korean vessels still trapped inside the Strait of Hormuz. According to the Oceans Ministry, 26 Korean vessels remain in the area, including the HMM Namu. Many of the 158 Korean crew members have been waiting for more than 2 months for safe passage amid the ongoing US-Iran conflict. Some Korean ships have moved to relatively safer waters near Qatar while maintaining contact with the government. Seoul says it is monitoring their situation in real time and reviewing additional safety measures, including possible further movement instructions. Oh Seung, Arirang News.
Over in Washington, D.C., South Korean and U.S. defense chiefs held talks on key alliance and security issues, including wartime operational control transfer and tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. Lee Seung-ja has this report.
South Korean Defense Minister An Kyu-baek met U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in Washington on Monday as the allies coordinated on major security issues, including wartime operational control transfer, alliance modernization, and tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. The Pentagon meeting marked the first defense ministers' talks between the two countries in more than 6 months. During opening remarks, Hegseth stressed the importance of allied unity and burden sharing, referencing the recent U.S. military operation against Iran.
The strength of our alliance is critical, and we look to our partners to stand shoulder to shoulder with us.
He also praised South Korea's pledge to increase defense spending and take on a larger role in defending the Korean peninsula. An voiced support for the Trump administration's peace through strength policy and said Seoul is also boosting defense spending and military capabilities to strengthen South Korea-led defense on the peninsula.
In line with this, we are also making every effort to secure core national defense capabilities through measures such as increasing defense spending so that we can realize a defense of the Korean peninsula led by us.
In a joint statement, both sides said that they discussed security on the Korean Peninsula and agreed to strengthen cooperation on key alliance issues, including the transfer of wartime operational control and alliance modernization. However, differences remain over the timeline for the transfer of wartime operational control. U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Xavier Brunson recently suggested early 2029 as a possible target date, while the Lee Jae-myung administration is reportedly aiming for completion before the end of its term in 2028. Other sensitive issues believed to have been discussed include cooperation on nuclear-powered submarines, North Korea-related intelligence sharing, and maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz following the attack on the South Korean cargo ship HMM Namu. 이승재, Arirang News.
Senior economic officials from the U.S. and China are gearing up to finalize the agenda for this week's high-stakes summit in Beijing, but will do so here in Seoul. Meanwhile, the Chinese capital is under tight security as it prepares to host U.S. President Donald Trump. Our Tong Hye-rim has the details.
Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are expected to hold talks in Seoul on Wednesday, a day before the U.S.-China summit in Beijing. He Lifeng arrived at Incheon International Airport on Tuesday, and Bessent is scheduled to arrive Wednesday after talks with Japanese officials in Tokyo. The talks in Seoul aim to bridge gaps on sensitive economic issues before the leaders meet, and to finalize the agenda on each country's priorities. Meanwhile, in Beijing, security has been reportedly tightened as police are stationed every 100 meters along major roads, and the Temple of Heaven has been closed to the public. The choice of the Temple of Heaven for this visit, rather than the Forbidden City where Trump visited during his first official visit to China in 2017, may be seen as a strategic shift. Experts say it suggests a focus on the two nations' role in managing the global order rather than a display of mutual hospitality. The summit is expected to hold much more than trade talks. As both nations seek to avoid a global energy crisis, the ongoing conflict in Iran and the threat to the Strait of Hormuz are set to dominate the discussions.
And China is one of the largest and most important economic relations Iran has. And of course, China is one of the most important players for the global economy. And a global recession, which would come from a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz, would dramatically affect both China and the United States.
The summit will also cover sensitive issues including Russia, semiconductor supply chains, and the red line of Taiwan. President Trump signaled on Monday that he will not shy away from the topic, especially following Washington's record $100 billion weapons package for Taiwan's defense last December. Tong Hye-rim, Arirang News.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Japanese Finance Minister Sasuke Katayama have pledged closer coordination to address currency market volatility following high-level talks in Tokyo on Tuesday. Currently, Japan is the largest foreign holder of U.S. government debt, with holdings exceeding $1.2 trillion. While Japan has recently spent billions in direct market interventions, Bessent suggested a preference for the Bank of Japan to tighten its monetary policy to support the yen more sustainably. Now, the meeting took place while Japan's 10-year government bond yield remains at a 29-year high. With around 3 weeks left until the local elections that are to shape the head figures around the country, the main political parties have announced their election pledges. For more details, we turn to our correspondent, An Sung-jin. Welcome back, Sung-jin.
Thanks for having me, Dami.
So, Sung-jin, the National Election Commission has released the election pledges for both the ruling and main opposition parties. Let's start with the ruling party. What are some of their main election pledges?
Right, so the two words regional development, that's what the ruling Democratic Party has been emphasizing for its election campaign, announcing balanced national development as its top campaign pledge. Now, what this entails is strengthening local government and redeveloping and reducing economic concentration in the capital area. Now, key proposals include completing their mega district initiative, which includes a 5 mega regions, 3 special autonomous provinces framework aimed at boosting region-led growth while expanding fiscal authority and autonomy for local governments. Now, the party also outlined broader economic and social initiatives, including fostering advanced industries such as AI and biotechnology and supporting youth employment. Additional pledges include expanding childcare and easing household financial burdens caused by inflation and currency volatility. The party also pledged to move forward with plans to establish Sejong as the nation's administrative capital by building a National Assembly branch office and a presidential office there during its administration. The DP also said it would push legal and institutional reforms with major budget measures reflected from their 2027 fiscal year.
I see. Then what about the main opposition parties? I mean, what have they unveiled as their main election pledge?
Right. Solving housing crisis would be the main opposition PPP, People Power Party's election message. So unlike the DP's regional development, the PPP has made housing stability and economic deregulation its top election pledge to address the housing crisis. The party proposed expanding the so-called half-price 전세 housing in Seoul and surrounding metropolitan areas. This entails offering long-term lease housing as roughly 50% of market rates, while providing broader tax benefits for renters. To increase housing supply, it promised to ease redevelopment and reconstruction regulations. The PPP further emphasized industrial growth, including incentives to encourage overseas Korean companies to relocate production back home, what it calls a Korean Inflation Reduction Act. Young adult-focused pledges include expanded rent support, an extended tax cut for young workers employed at small and medium-sized enterprises. The party also proposed measures aimed at boosting disposable income for workers, including indexing income tax brackets to inflation, expanding education-related tax deductions, and introducing more flexible dividend payment systems.
Well, Sung-jin, now that all the election pledges are out, how is the rest of the election schedule expected to unfold? Tell us.
Right, so the official registration process takes place this Thursday and Friday, and candidates move from preliminary campaigning to officially registering to run for office. Now, once this 2-day registration period is over, official campaigning will begin on May 21st and continue for 13 days. Candidates will now take part in street rallies, televised debates, and policy-focused events aimed at persuading undecided voters. Early voting is scheduled for May 29th and 30th, allowing voters to cast ballots anywhere in the country with valid identification. The main election will take place on June 3rd, with vote counting beginning immediately after polls close. The competing pledges highlight a clear divide in priorities, and as both parties unveil ambitious policy agendas, we will have to keep an eye on where voters will weigh in as campaigning intensifies in the coming weeks.
Right, the next few weeks will be critical for both political parties. Sung-jin, do keep us posted, and thanks for coming in tonight.
My pleasure, as always.
President Lee Jae-myung has urged that expansionary fiscal policy be reflected in the economic planning for this year and next year. He stressed that now is the time to spend to boost the economy. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Making more investments to prop up economic growth. That was what President Lee Jae-myung called for on Tuesday at the Cabinet/Emergency Economic Meeting as he assessed that the current conditions constitute an emergency that requires expansionary fiscal policy.
절약이 미덕일 때가 있었습니다. 안 쓰고 아끼고 저축하고 막 허리띠 졸라매고. 그러나 지금은 소비가 미덕인 시대입니다.
As he noted the economic impact of the consumption vouchers distributed last year, the president urged officials to ensure that active fiscal policy is reflected in the growth strategy plan for the latter half of the year, as well as next year's budget planning. He said critics calling for government belt-tightening were irresponsible and were turning a blind eye to people's hardships.
포퓰리즘적인 긴축 재정론의 함정에 빠져서는 안 됩니다. 적극적 재정을 통해서 내수를 활성화하고 또 경제 성장률과 GDP 자체를 높이면 분모가 커져가지고 국가 부채 비율은 오히려 떨어집니다.
Lee said South Korea's net debt amounts to around 10% of its GDP, adding that its debt structure is sturdier than its global peers. He was referring to last month's IMF fiscal monitor. Economic challenges were prominent, such as addressing what the president called predatory financing, citing certain cases where low-income borrowers were being exploited by what are called bad banks. All this as tensions in the Middle East show no clear sign of ending. South Korea continues its efforts to cushion the impact on the economy, while at the same time bracing for a renewed economic order after the war. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, exports have kept the South Korean economy relatively resilient, but analysts here believe external factors, including tensions in the Middle East, remain as tangible variables amid mounting energy costs. Kim Do-yeon explains.
The Korea Development Institute has upgraded its assessment of the Korean economy. In its May economic trends report released Tuesday, the state-run think tank said the economy is showing a recovery trend, shifting its language from the gradual economic improvement it had used since last November. The recovery is driven by a massive increase in semiconductor exports and an improving service sector. All industry production rose 3.5% on-year in March. Exports surged 48% in April, led by a 173.5% jump in semiconductors amid a global AI boom. However, inflation remains a persistent risk. Consumer prices accelerated to 2.6% in April, fueled by a 21.9% spike in petroleum product prices stemming from Middle East tensions. The Korea Institute for International Economic Policy echoed these concerns in its updated 2026 Global Economic Outlook. While maintaining its global growth forecast at 3.0%, the institute characterized the current environment as one of overlapping shocks and a narrow path for recovery.
The shocks the global economy faces this year are no longer isolated incidents. Energy, trade, and fiscal pillars are operating in a chain structure, amplifying one another.
For Korea, the institute noted a stark dual structure. The nation's macroeconomic aggregates are buffered by the global AI and memory chip boom, yet its domestic demand and manufacturing base remain heavily exposed to surging energy import costs.
While semiconductor exports drive overall indicators, the government must closely monitor sectors heavily burdened by energy costs. We must scrutinize this asymmetry emerging between industries.
Experts advise that navigating this narrow path will require proactive monitoring of supply chain disruptions and highly targeted support for vulnerable sectors. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea is looking to fundamentally improve how it manages its foreign workforce, which has now reached 1.1 million people. To better address industry needs and protect the rights of migrant workers, the Ministry of Employment and Labor held a forum on Tuesday. The discussions focused on moving away from the current system, where policies are fragmented across different ministries based on visa types. Presenters at the forum emphasized shifting the focus from simply bringing workers to supporting their entire life cycle, including recruitment, training, and long-term settlement. The ministry also plans to finalize and announce an integrated foreign labor support roadmap within the first half of this year. Korea's largest broadcasting and media exhibition, KOBA 2026, has opened here in Seoul, highlighting how AI is reshaping the future of content production and media technology. Our Jo Young-eun was there.
The 34th Korea International Broadcasting, Media, Audio, and Lighting Show, or KOBA 2026, opened in Seoul on Tuesday under the theme AI-powered media era, where content connects, creation evolves, and convergence begins. Jointly organized by Korea ENX and the Korea Broadcast Engineers and Technicians Association, this year's exhibition features more than 220 companies and around 1,000 booths from Korea and abroad. Organizers expect attendance to exceed last year's figure with more than 40,000 visitors projected during the 4-day event.
We see KOBA evolving in step with the growth of Korea's broadcasting industry. The exhibition features AI-powered content and a range of converging technologies. Visitors can also explore various content solutions and products utilizing cloud services and business platforms.
The exhibition spans the entire broadcasting, media, audio, and lighting industries, showcasing the latest technologies including 4K and 8K broadcasting systems, AI solutions, and digital content platforms. The event is sponsored by government agencies including the Ministry of Science and ICT, along with major Korean broadcasters such as Arirang TV.
Arirang TV is showcasing practical AI technologies that can be used immediately in the field without requiring costly infrastructure. AI can control switchers through voice commands, while lightweight NDI-based IP technology enables seamless connections between headquarters and remote production sites.
KOBA 2026 aims to move beyond the conventional trade show by offering a more immersive, experience-oriented content platform.
Our offerings include projectors, Lumix cameras, and system equipment. Panasonic is striving to go beyond being simply a broadcasting equipment manufacturer and becoming a company that can offer customers a complete ecosystem and provide integrated solutions.
Having evolved alongside rapid technological shifts, from the rise of one-person media to today's VFX, XR, and OTT-driven landscape, KOBA has continued to grow into one of Korea's leading media industry platforms throughout the 2020s. The exhibition is attracting industry leaders as a place to showcase the latest broadcasting and media technologies and explore new global business opportunities. KOBA 2026 will continue through Friday. 조영은, Arirang News.
Tomorrow, clear skies will return with warm spring weather, and temperatures will rise further toward Thursday and the weekend. Seoul's daytime high will climb up to 29 degrees Celsius on Thursday, and temperatures could reach up to 30 degrees over the weekend. But there'll also be big day-to-night temperature swings, so please dress in layers. Meanwhile, a dry weather advisory are in effect for the eastern coastal areas of Gangwon-do province, so please be cautious of wildfire risks. Tomorrow, UV levels will be very high nationwide during the daytime. So make sure to wear sunscreen and avoid outdoor activities as much as possible. Tomorrow, clear skies will return. Seoul will start the day at 14 degrees, Chuncheon at 13 degrees, Busan at 15 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 25 degrees. Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Gwangju will all top out at 26 degrees. Looking ahead, about 5 millimeters of rain is expected over the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
An in-depth studio discussion,
on AI, bio, climate, defense, and economy, the 5 key industries driven by Korea. We also examine how the 5 future strategic industries are bringing innovations to workplaces and everyday life. Focus on K Initiative at the heart of change. A journey to find real beauty items, beauty on and off. Exploring how beauty is perceived across cultures and generations and highlighting K-beauty culture from multiple angles. Idol group On and Off try the products themselves and come up with their own guidelines. The most honest beauty report you can trust. Beauty On and Off. Michelin star chef Fabrizio teams up with a traditional liquor sommelier to offer the most exquisite balance of tastes. Explore more than just recipes, but the rich layers of flavors, as well as the beautiful backdrops of breweries across the nation. Experience the Korean sentiments and the art of balance laid out on a table. Music for the ears as well as the eyes. Come closer to the riveting charm of K-pop. Experience the height of performance, style, and detail. An interactive music show calling out to K-pop fans around the world. Tune in to Simply K-pop, the trendiest choice for global fans.
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% consensus rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. Knock knock! The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Poli Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kabion by your side, you can become a Kabion master and save humanity like a total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen.
The global film industry is once again turning its attention to Cannes as the 79th Cannes Film Festival officially gets underway in southern France. And for the first time in years, Korean cinema is firmly back in the spotlight. Director Na Hong-jin's new film Hope has become Korea's first competition entry in 4 years, raising expectations for a possible run at the Palme d'Or. And at the same time, Korean films are appearing across multiple sections of the festival, while director Park Chan-wook makes history as the first Korean ever to chair the Cannes competition jury. But beyond the celebration, this year's festival is also reflecting broader changes in global cinema, from the return of auteur storytelling to growing debates over the role of artificial intelligence in filmmaking. So what does this year's Cannes Festival tell us about where global cinema is heading and where Korean cinema stands within that changing landscape? For answers to this, we are joined in the studio by Jason Vegeres, Assistant Professor of the Office of International Affairs at Hanyang University. A very big welcome, Jason.
Hello, Mogyo.
And also joining us online is Mark Raymond, Professor of the Department of Media and Communication at Kwangwon University. Good to see you, Professor.
Good to see you.
So let's begin with Professor Raymond. Like I said, if we go back last year, not a single Korean film was invited to the Cannes, but this year Korea is back in the spotlight with multiple invitations, and like I've said, even our very own director Park Chan-wook serving as jury president. What do you think has changed in just a year time, and what does this year feel? Why does it feel so different this time around?
Well, I think a lot of it is just kind of the randomness of years, in a way. Certainly last year there were, speaking of Park Chan-wook, his film No Other Choice ended up premiering at Venice, but I think it certainly was a film good enough to have been invited to Cannes, just the scheduling didn't really line up. And also another great Korean film from last year, The World of Love, premiered at Toronto, but did not, again, but I think was worthy enough to be in competition at Cannes. So I think it's just some years, you know, you have these kind of ups and downs in terms of the number of films from any country that end up in the competition section. This year, for example, there are 3 Japanese films. That's quite unusual. So I don't think there's anything overly kind of that we can really point to. It's just kind of the way in which the way films kind of get distributed when they get released, to what directors are in what year. And this year we have a new film from a fairly acclaimed director, Na Hong-jin, and that film is in competition. Now, last year was a bit unusual in that you didn't really have any films at all, even outside of the competition. But I think that was just a bit of an anomaly. And I think this year we're maybe getting back more to the norms. Yeah.
Right, which makes us more excited about this year's event, of course. Now, like we've touched upon, Professor Vegeres, director Park Chan-wook, he becomes the first Korean ever to chair this Cannes competition jury. How significant is that role? Please explain for our viewers.
Well, yeah, it's hugely significant. You know, the jury plays obviously a crucial role in deciding what film wins the Palme d'Or and the other awards. And, you know, these films often go on to not only secure festival invitations elsewhere, but these days, at least, they're entering the awards race. So we saw that, of course, with Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, that won the Palme d'Or there, and then went on to win, you know, multiple awards at the Oscars, including Best Picture. And if you go back and look at some of the, you know, the jury presidents, and if we make the Park Chan-wook connection, back in 2004, Quentin Tarantino was the jury head, and Old Boy won the Grand Prix that year. And I think he wanted that film to ultimately win the Palme d'Or, but, you know, being a jury head, you're not a dictator. You do need to listen to, you know, the opinions of the whole jury and reflect that in decisions that they make. And it was actually, you know, Fahrenheit 9/11, the documentary that won the Palme d'Or that year. And so, you know, these jury presidents do play a big role in deciding. Obviously, they're listening to, you know, the opinions of those around, you know, the actors and the talent around them in making those those decisions. But it is a big role, and I think it's significant that Park Chan-wook is, the first Korean director to chair that jury, and it underscores the growing popularity of the Korean film industry.
So it is indeed a representation of how much Korean film has become, globally accepted, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, Park Chan-wook is someone whose, his films have been in competition multiple times. And of course, you've got the other auteurs, Lee Chang-dong, you've got Bong Joon-ho, and I'm sure, they'll get their time, they'll have their time, where they're, the jury head at some point, because they're just, titans of global cinema. But it is, Park Chan-wook, Park Chan-wook was the first, Old Boy was the first Korean film, well, actually, it wasn't the first Korean film to win an award at the Cannes Film Festival, but it was the first Korean film to win, like, the second prize. In Kwon-taek won Best Director there for Chim Hwa-son. So it's not a surprise that he is now heading the jury. I mean, of course, Parasite was the first film to win the Palme d'Or, but that came much later.
So we will definitely be looking forward for more appointments
no doubt,
moving forward. Now, among these invited films, Na Hong-jin's Hope is especially drawing attention as Korea's first entry in 4 years. Professor Raymond, what makes Hope one of the most anticipated films at the Cannes this year?
Well, I think a big thing is that this is exactly 10 years since the last film by this director, which was The Wailing, which also played at Cannes. It was not in competition. It screened out of competition, but it got very good notices at a Cannes with a lot of very excited viewers for the film. And also his previous film, The Yellow Sea from 2011, also played at Cannes in the In Certain Regard section, which usually has like sort of younger filmmakers in it. So there's a lot of anticipation for this director to kind of, who's always been acclaimed, but works very slowly. And this is, I think, maybe people looking at him as maybe this is the film that's going to break him through in the same way Park Chan-wook and Bong Joon-ho did. There's an obvious comparison here to something like Snowpiercer, which Bong Joon-ho directed back in 2013. This film is also, a sci-fi film. It has some international cast, even though it's probably even more of a Korean film than Snowpiercer was, but it has those kind of similarities. So I think people are really looking for, with this film, maybe for Na Hong-jin to sort of really break through and become even more. He's already well established and acclaimed, but really to sort of maybe join the upper echelons in terms of international cinema. So we'll see how the film does and what kind of the reception is like.
We'll definitely be looking forward to that. But beyond Hope, Professor Bejeve's other Korean films were also invited to the midnight screening and director's fortnight sections as well. What do you think that says about the overall strength of Korean cinema right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got 3 Korean films. Mark obviously mentioned Na Hong-jin's Hope. You've got July Jung's Dora, Young Sang-ho's Colony. Now, these 3 directors are actually secured multiple invitations to the Cannes Film Festival. Na Hong-jin, every film he's made, is screened at Cannes. And it's also true for July Jung as well. 3 films. I was hoping to see her latest film in competition. Alas, it's in director's fortnight. I'm a huge fan of hers. Her previous films, Next So He was absolutely an astonishing film, and A Girl at My Door as well. And so yeah, I think it does represent, it signifies the appeal of Korean cinema. You've got a genre film there. Yoon Sang-ho's Colony it's a zombie movie. It's not, I don't think, in terms of, it's not the part of the same kind of Train to Busan universe, but it's a zombie film nonetheless. Very much a genre movie. And then you've got an art house film. I expect it to be. I'm talking about July Jung's Dora. I expect it to be very challenging, intellectually stimulating. And then you've got Na Na Hong-jin's Hope, and goodness knows what that's about. We don't know much about it at the moment, but I'm sure it's going to veer off in all sorts of different directions, as was the case with The Wailing and meshing genres. And so there's a real mix there, and I think that just goes to show the kind of the range of Korean cinema, the breadth of Korean cinema, but also the ability that directors have here to mesh and play around with different genres, and that's what you saw in Parasite, executed so well.
Right. The lineup definitely seems to reflect a broad range of Korean storytelling. Now, at the same time, many of this year's Cannes selections appear to kind of favor auteur-driven and human-centered storytelling over large-scale studio blockbusters. Professor Raymond, what do you think that says about the current direction of global cinema?
Well, this is something, Cannes has always been, especially when we're looking at the competition section at Cannes, you don't see a lot of blockbusters in that competition. You will see some like Hollywood films screen out of competition or sort of opening or things like that nature, but you don't see within the competition that really does tend to be driven by, or auteur-driven films. Usually well-known, well-established directors, or maybe directors who have made a great first film and get in those kind of things. Like Park Chan-wook back with Old Boy back in 2004 would be a good example of this. And actually the film Hope, the Korean entry, is probably one of the bigger kind of budget films that's in the competition. So it is. So Cannes tends to, with their competition, and there's always kind of a debate within, not so much within Cannes itself, but there's oftentimes, if the Palme d'Or winner is not felt to be overly commercial, there's maybe some pushback by some distributors. Parasite was a great example of a film that won the Palme d'Or, and yet was you could market it, and obviously it did very well in North America, throughout the world. It played sort of everywhere. But that's not always the case. A lot of times the Palme d'Or winner isn't really all that marketable. You can't really sell it. It's obviously just having the Palme d'Or, the fact that it won Cannes, is going to give it some distribution, is going to get it out there to some extent, but not to the same extent, depending on, again, not to the same extent as something like Parasite would be. Like, so for example, the year before Parasite, the film Shoplifters, which is a Japanese film, wins the Palme d'Or. It doesn't have anywhere near the kind of box office internationally, even though it's a great film. It just isn't as easy to kind of market to a broader audience the way Parasite was.
Mm-hmm. Now, staying with the atmosphere of these films, Professor Bajaj, interestingly, many of the selected films deal with deep human emotions like grief and war and also loss. So do you think critics are now kind of looking for more intimate storytelling?
Yeah, the lineup this year, it's interesting. You've got a lot of films dealing with conflict. Obviously, I've not seen any of these films. I'm just going by a basic synopsis. But, you've got Lucas Dant's World War I film, Coward. You've got another, several other films actually dealing with conflict. Fjord, which is set in France. And also Moulin as well. A whole number of movies that are kind of dealing with conflict and set during wars, and also other films dealing with grief as well. I think there is, it's really important that that audiences connect with films and with characters, and often it is through these kind of emotional journeys. But I think what's interesting with Cannes especially is I heard this phrase, event art house space, and I think Parasite was a really important moment in that. Kind of carrying what Mark was saying, and you've got films that do, they screen at the Cannes Film Festival, and then they go on to do quite well commercially. Of course, like Parasite, but we've got films like Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, a number of films from last year that did really well at the Oscars, or at least nominated at the Oscars as well. And so it'd be interesting to see what happens this year and whether that continues, because I think 2019, 2020 art house cinema or non-English language cinema, it changed. Like it really did. Like the accessibility and the appetite for it has changed. It's not to say there aren't challenges these days, but I think it's a really interesting time for critics. Go back to your question, but also general audiences as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, shifting gears, we hear that the Cannes is also becoming a very big stage for debates over the future role of AI in filmmaking. So the festival says AI can assist production, but films driven primarily by generative AI will be excluded from the competition. Professor Raymond, why is the industry trying to draw that kind of line right now?
Well, I think it's because of this kind of fear of AI kind of being a replacement for so many of the people who work on films. And so what I think Cannes, and I think the industry overall, is what they want to do with AI is really to see it maybe as a tool, as something that maybe an extension of something like computer-generated imagery, CGI, as something that can make it more affordable for more filmmakers to put more special effects in their films, things of that nature. But they want to kind of draw the line at having AI replace, actors, writers, those more creative kind of parts of the industry. And so this is why there's this kind of sort of anxiety around this technology. This isn't anything new. There's always kind of when CGI replaced practical effects, there was within that branch sort of anxiety about that. But this is AI is much broader and much more potentially threatening. And so that I think that's where a lot of this kind of debate goes. And it's not surprising that Cannes is more on the anti-AI side. You see other festivals maybe embracing it a little bit more, but because Cannes is so much associated with the art of cinema, as you know, Cannes also had fights with Netflix and things like that over the years. So Cannes always going to be, I think, maybe on the more reluctant side in terms of AI than maybe some other festivals would be. But I think this is something that most people in the industry have at least a lot of caution about, if not outright kind of hostility towards.
Right. A lot of debate has been raised about this use of AI. Now, speaking of which, Professor Regeres, then how do you think the industry should be able to draw this line between technological development and human creativity? Well, it's a tough question, I know. Yeah,
I mean, this is $1 million question. Everywhere I go, it's like AI, and there is this debate. I think Korea on the whole seems to be embracing. It's a grand generalization there, but it seems to be embracing AI, and the film industry, already we've seen festivals like the Busan International Fantastic Film Festival, otherwise known as BIFAM. They've had a big AI focus, and some see it as a tool to do, for visual effects and so on and so forth. And I've seen some of these AI films, and the clarity is quite unnerving. But yeah, how far do we go with AI? I mean, AI doesn't have a soul, and so storytelling is so. Like creating that story, that kind of going back to what I was talking about, that emotional connection between the audience and the film and the characters. That's something I don't think AI can do. It will try, and you'll get people that will try and get it to do that. But I think it will really struggle to do so. And so I think, you know, there is this debate in how far we want to go with artificial intelligence in terms of filmmaking and the whole processes. And sure, it can help save money. There's no doubt about that. And given the problems of where the industry is right now, with a lack of investment and the changing in viewing habits and so on and so forth, so there is that opportunity. But I think there is that risk. You don't want. I don't want to sound, you know, like the too Terminator style, and you know, but where you've got, you know, AI kind of out of control. But yeah, I mean, I see it as a tool potentially, but you know, I'm worried about it going, you know, too much further in you know, and also taking jobs away. I mean, there are people whose livelihoods depend very much, you know, on their work, and they're losing work to AI. And sure, the industry has to evolve with that. But these are pressing questions that will be certainly talked about at Cannes and other festivals to come.
Right, definitely. So finding that balance would be a very major challenge going forward. But thank you so much for your insights, Professor Vejbej. We'll have to, unfortunately, conclude our discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Professor Raymond, too, we really appreciate your time and your insights tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.